Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me at the art table again today. I wanted to talk a little bit about Eric D. July's Rippaverse campaign. Now right off the bat, I know that this is a bit of a strange name to use for it because the Rippaverse's ISOM Volume 1, which is the first comic in the Rippaverse, is already completed and ready to ship. So basically you are just buying something rather than backing a campaign to bring a project to fruition. Now, I know some people prefer one and some people prefer the other, but that's not really what I'm here to talk about today. As of this recording, ISOM number 1 is at $1,874,000 raised, or perhaps more accurately, dollars in sales. With that kind of a total, it is very tempting for the independent creator to look at Rippaverse and ask themselves, what can I learn from what Eric July has done? How can I apply that to my own creative campaigns? What lessons can I take from this that will make an audience more invested in my project? As soon as someone does this, it is very tempting to think that you cannot learn anything from what Eric has done. The Rippaverse is sold not through a crowdfunding site, but through the Rippaverse website, which has its own web store built into it. It is marketed primarily on the back of the Young Rippa brand, which is Eric July's rapper name, which he has spent a long time developing already. He has also invested a lot of time into a YouTube presence as Young Rippa, and he has a sizable following in both of these spheres already. It is true that success tends to breed success, but if you haven't found that first success yet, well, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot that you can draw from the Rippaverse at first glance. Yes, Eric July really leveraged his Young Rippa persona, he really leveraged his fan base, and he really leveraged his YouTube connections to build up a lot of hype for the Rippaverse and get a lot of eyes on it before he launched. And that is all very shrewd, but it's not something that a newcomer can do very easily. In the attention economy, getting eyeballs on your product is as difficult, if not more difficult, than convincing them to invest money in your product once they've actually seen it. Mr. July had this problem taken care of before he even clicked go on his campaign. I will be the very first to admit that become a very famous rapper and YouTuber is not great advice for someone looking to market themselves as an independent author or comic creator. That said, I do think there are a few things that we can learn from what Young Rippa has done and apply to our own creative campaigns. Not so much to the creative process, but to that ever-pesky necessity of marketing your product and getting people to pay attention to it. Now, I want to make it clear that I am not commenting at all about the story of the Rippaverse itself or the art of the Rippaverse. These things we haven't really seen a whole lot of, and that is actually one of my only critiques for Eric July's marketing campaign. I would have liked to know a little bit more about the story and the art in the weeks building up to the release of his comic. But based on the enormous response he's gotten, there are plenty of people who are willing to take a gamble on this, and he has done something to convince them to do this, with only very scarce details on his overarching story, the characters, or the art style on how he intends to approach it. I intend to leave all of my commentary on those issues for when I finally see ISOM number 1. Since I don't have that product in hand right now, I am strictly looking at the things that Eric July did to build interest in his brand and set himself apart from other American comic publishers, and particularly other people in the crowdfunding genre. So right off the bat, let's throw out the other thing that people will often think when they see Young Rippa's campaign. Oh, he probably succeeded because he finished the project before he started the campaign. First of all, that's not entirely accurate. Not only did he finish the project, he had the product in hand and in fact in his warehouse before he clicked go on the project. And that is something we haven't even seen from companies like Iconic Comics. Where the Iconic projects typically have the art complete, they don't actually have a physical product in hand, in no small part because they use their crowdfunding process to gauge demand. By having the product in hand, July is actually making an additional promise above and beyond the Iconic promise of a book is coming in just a few months. He is making the promise that a book is coming right away. There is no risk that the printer falls through. There is no risk that the product will run out. Your book is absolutely coming to you. Well, in theory anyways. Mr. July has apparently underestimated demand for his product, and he may actually have to go through a lengthy restocking process in order to fulfill all of the orders that he has gotten on this first campaign. That is an understandable mishap because I don't think anyone saw this level of success coming, but it is also going to make gauging interest in the second campaign even more difficult, because if he overorders, anticipating the same response he got this time, he could very well be stuck with a lot of product that doesn't move on the second outing, and if he underorders again, he runs the risk of looking like he can't actually run a supply chain as well as you might hope. Thankfully, that's not my headache, that's Eric's. I also don't think that this particular wrinkle is occurring to a lot of people who are excited to get a book right away. So, as it stands from the marketing standpoint, the promise of a book as soon as it is ordered is a powerful part of what is propelling young Rippa's success. But as is so often the case, I think there's even more to it than that. Rippa has made two important promises to his audience right out of the gate. The first is story-related. He promises no reboots, no continuity shifts, no multiverses, none of the gimmicks that he personally has advocated against in comics, and particularly superhero comics, as a very negative part of the genre. Eric July wants continuity to matter, he wants people's investments in his characters to matter, and he is making them the promise that he will do everything he can as the primary creator and financier of this endeavor to ensure that the canon he wants his audience to invest in remains as solid as he can make it. That is a commitment to integrity that, as far as I know, no other comic publisher has made. And with good reason. There are reasons to retcon your continuity. There are reasons to make small changes here and there. Publishers do weigh the pros of keeping canon versus the pros of making their story a little bit more accessible, a little bit easier to understand, or a little bit more in line with the world as it is now, as opposed to the world as it was when the story was originally published. I think that, with moderation and very strong editorial control, a publishing company can make changes to canon with continuity that the audience will, by and large, accept and roll with. However, right now, comics publishers are completely trampling on any restraint on their retcons, on their disrespect of canon, on their contempt for the characters that they have inherited from previous generations of creators. In this environment, then, Eric July's promise to respect continuity and canon for the sake of the audience is a powerful promise that holds a lot of weight. The Rippaverse is firmly targeting the excesses of the current American comic market and saying, if you hate that, don't worry. As long as I am in charge, that will not happen here. That is a very powerful promise, and one we have not heard from any other creator in this space. The second thing that Eric July has done is he has made a compact between himself and his audiences as concerns respect, accessibility, and understandability of the product he is bringing. He has forsworn certain creative options, such as political storylines, and he has presented himself as a person who is working to earn the approval of his audience, not a person the audience must look up to. Eric July is a storyteller much more in the vein of the person who sits down at a campfire and shares a story with you than he is an anointed chronicler who is sharing a true story with you that was handed to him by God. Once again, this is a deviation from the way the modern comic book industry functions. Even many of the comic book creators who have entered into the independent sphere present themselves as auteurs or innovators leading a charge that they expect their audiences to join in them with. Young Rippa, on the other hand, presents himself simply as a man who hopes to entertain and hopes that you will pay a couple of dollars to share in the stories that he presents with him. Again, there's nothing unique about this promise, but it is a marked change from the current environment especially. This is a powerful promise for people who are tired of the way the mainstream seems to be full of preachers, and a refreshing change from some of the bigger voices in independent comics who seem to be fixated on the idea that they are building an entirely new industry and everyone needs to pitch in and get on board with their plans for that industry. Eric July may not approve of the way mainstream comics go, but he doesn't expect his audience to be part of his crusade to change things beyond just enjoying the stories he tells. It is a very narrow, specific, and targeted image that he is looking to create. And I'm not implying that it's different from what he actually wants to do, either. I don't know Eric well enough to say whether it is or is not. In these situations, I tend to give the benefit of the doubt because that's what I would like others to do for me, so I'm going to assume that young Rippa really does approach creating comics in this way, until such a time as I see some evidence that suggests otherwise. The point is, all young Rippa asks is that you pay for the comics you think you will enjoy, and you pass on the rest. He has put as little burden as possible on his audience. That makes the $40 to $50 price tag of buying and shipping a book to you a little easier to swallow, and is undoubtedly a major part of what has led to his success. To reiterate, I think that Eric July's success is rooted in 3 factors: a promise of an immediate fulfillment, a promise to respect the investment of time and emotional investment that the audience will have in his stories, and a promise not to ask for any investment beyond the financial and emotional investment innate to a story of this type. Although these very handy rules for success have been multiplied across an extremely powerful platform, I think they are lessons that any independent creator can learn from and apply in their own crowdfunding campaigns. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Let me know what you think of the Rippaverse down in the comments below. There's a like button and a subscribe button down there. You can use those as you see fit, and I will talk to you